puts all those brilliant little ideas into your head? I've come from your head.
Okay. And what are you doing here?
Well, you add the light bulb.
The light bulb.
Yes, the light bulb. The inspiration, the idea. Me. Anyway, let's hear it.
Well, since you're from my head, you know, like I'm a YouTuber. And my idea was to take classic Disney songs, run them through Google Translate in multiple different languages, and then when we translate it back to English, it'll be so messed up, it'll be hilarious. Like, I can't believe no one's thought of this before.
Oh no, not again.
What's the matter? Isn't that funny?
It's been done. Millions of weeks.
No, it hasn't.
What else you got?
Okay. So what if we took random scenes from Pixar and Disney movies and bleeped out the words so that the audience thinks that they're saying something profane?
Have you been on YouTube? This is supposed to be new.
That is new. Okay, what if we made a year-long series with a video posted every day, but then near the end, I delete all the videos to create intrigue?
You literally watched an Unis Annis video like a month ago.
What more do you want from me, Muse? There are only so many ideas out there.
Yes, everything's been done before. Everything's a cliche. Like this, for instance. This is a bit.
This is a bit of torture for me.
Likewise. See, the problem isn't that it hasn't been done before. The problem is you're just flat out stealing someone else's idea without even realizing it.
Bruh, I'm not a plagiarist. I'm an original. I would never steal somebody else's idea.
Well, that's the problem. You don't even realize you're doing it. It's actually a more common than you know, a well-documented psychological phenomenon called cryptomnesia.
Krypton what now?
Cryptomnesia refers to generating a word, an idea, a song, or a solution to a problem with a belief that is either totally original or at least original within the present context. In actuality, the item is not original, but one which has been produced by someone else or even oneself at an earlier time.
You're reading it off a page. Are you doing it right now, that cryptomnesia?
Cryptomnesia, child. And besides, it's a direct quote. I am citing my sources. And if it really were cryptomnesia, then I wouldn't even be aware that I was making up that definition. Oh, excuse me, that you were making up that definition yourself. Because I am, after all, in your head.
This is so confusing. Why don't you tell me how cryptomnesia happens?
You do realize that if I do that, that'll turn this into a full-out cliché educational video where we teach other content creators about cryptomnesia and how to avoid getting sued for accidentally stealing someone else's idea, right?
At least it's still a video. A cliché one is better than a stolen one.
Fine. You know, you're pretty lucky. It's a good thing I can wear a lot of hats. Cryptomnesia is actually a form of memory error called misattribution. It's where you remember an idea, but you forget the source. So you think it's from you. We tend to trust ourselves and our own ideas more than we trust other people's. So if our brain finds an idea it likes, but it can't remember where it's from, it thinks it's so genius it's got to be from you.
Well, I am a genius.
The word cryptomnesia has actually been used since 1900, and it literally means in memory. Since it's been around so long, it means all the psychology and philosophy bigwigs like Freud, Jung, and Nietzsche took a crack at it.
Not Freud!
I know, but listen. Freud experienced cryptomnesia several times in his life. One of the most interesting was when he realized he had forgotten all about a book he had adored when he was a teenager, written by an author named Ludwig Born. But after he rediscovered this book, over 50 years later, he realized that some of the opinions in the essay were quite similar to deeply held beliefs that had contributed to his psychoanalytical theory of free association. But what's important here is that Freud deeply identified with Born when he was a teenager. They were both German, Jewish, deep thinkers, and held a lot of the same passions.
So you only accidentally steal ideas from people you like?
Well, maybe. A study by McCrae, Bodenhausen, and Calvini found that we are more likely to accidentally plagiarize from someone who is similar to us, such as the same sex. It contributes to source confusion.
So it's a compliment.
Maybe sometimes, but Freud and some of those other early psychology people believe that cryptomnesia has a lot to do with repression, or your subconscious trying to block information to protect yourself. They thought that the information that was blocked may remind you of a painful relationship with someone, or a characteristic about yourself that you couldn't accept yet. When the information comes back, they thought it was because you were in a similar mental state to when you first heard the information, which, by the way, is a memory theory called state-dependent memory. But somewhere along the way, you lost the source of the idea, so now you think it's a new idea from your own noggin.
Well, no disrespect to Freud, but that's a lot of speculation for a difficult concept.
That's true. It's actually been kind of difficult to determine how you can study a thing like cryptomnesia. But some really smart people came up with a way to study it. The experiment had pairs of people take turns coming up with words that fit categories, like four-legged animals and words that start with th. The participants were told they couldn't repeat any of the words their partner said. Next, participants were asked to recall the words that they had suggested and sort of take credit for them. Finally, participants were asked to come up with several new words for each category that they hadn't been brought up yet. Now, if you've been paying attention, you realize that there are 3 different ways you could have a sort of cryptomnesia here. By repeating something your partner said during idea generation, by saying that you suggested something your partner actually said during recollection, and by saying something that you or your partner said earlier during new idea generation. All these studies pretty much found that cryptomnesia was more likely to happen in the taking credit part of the experiment, the recollection. The studies also found that it's more common to accidentally plagiarize others than yourself.
Wait, you can accidentally plagiarize yourself?
Oh yes, another psychology bigwig named B.F. Skinner once said, "One of the most disheartening experiences of old age is discovering that a brilliant point you have just made so significant, so beautifully expressed, was made in something you published a long time ago."
Dang. Well, what did these studies find? Did they predict when cryptomnesia would happen?
They definitely found that cryptomnesia was more likely to happen. Freud and some other researchers showed us that it's easier to accidentally plagiarize someone who's similar to you. Distraction during the idea generation task also makes it easier to accidentally plagiarize because you're not paying attention to who said what. Some lovely Belgian and American researchers found that the presence of what's called cognitive operations can help you determine whether an idea is yours or not. If you can remember details about an idea, such as what it sounded like when you pronounced it, whether you suggested it first, middle, or last in a list, whether a mental image was associated with it, and whether you came up with it because of some sort of mental strategy, like because it reminded you of your childhood, then that idea is more likely to be from you and not from someone else. These researchers also found that participants were more likely to be highly confident during recollection of their own responses than they were when they were accidentally plagiarizing. However, at least 50% of plagiarized responses and new errors had very confident ratings for one of those characteristics I mentioned, like list placement or auditory sound of the idea, which means that confidence doesn't necessarily mean it's your idea.
You know, I find that having overconfidence is worse than having no confidence at all.
Dude, I literally said that last week when we nearly blew up Mount Rushmore in the My Littlest Pet Shop video game.
Well, if cryptomnesia is really unintentional, how do you stop it from happening?
As I'm sure you picked up by now, cryptomnesia is a big deal because it can get you in a lot of legal and ethical trouble. Whether you meant to or not, you still stole an idea from someone, and they can still sue you because you took the revenue from their idea. But, as the YouTuber JB Winslow says, using other people's ideas all the time keeps you back from your own creative potential. You should learn to be your creative self, not accidentally copying someone else. I would highly recommend watching his video about preventing cryptomnesia, but as a quick summary, he suggests embracing inspiration so you can recognize where your ideas come from. It's not wrong to be inspired by someone else's idea, but you have to consciously make it your own. It's also helpful to get a second opinion to help identify the source. Start to get to know how your creative mind works and where your ideas come from, and be critical of the first easy idea that pops into your head. It may not be yours. From a more psychological point of view, it comes down to source monitoring. Are you actually thinking about where your ideas come from, or are you just being lazy and assuming it's from you? Yes, part of source monitoring is the moment when you first hear the idea and maybe you don't fully put into your memory that it came from your Aunt Sue. And maybe you can't control that now, but you can control the decision process after you have the idea. Studies show that we tend to engage in better source monitoring when we know we're going to be evaluated, i.e. someone might catch us if we steal an idea. Marsh and Landau say that failing to recall a source more often happens because you didn't try to recall it, not because you actually forgot it. You can always try to remember the cognitive operations associated with the idea by trying to remember if you've heard the word pronounced, if it's associated with a mental image, or if it was in place on a list. So before you go running off with an idea, take some time to evaluate it. Don't just fall back on your own genius and assume it's yours. Although your muse can be pretty genius.
I've got one more question for you, Muse.
Fine, but only one more. I'm so tired of repeating old information. There's too many new ideas to create and not enough time.
Why do you talk like that?
Excuse me, this is how I talk.
This is how you talk? You're in my head. I'm not British. It wouldn't happen to be because Jamie Windsor, that YouTuber you mentioned, has a British accent?
Crap, you got me.